All right, so welcome everybody. VAPEVENT Miami. We have Tony Abboud from Vapor Technology Association, who's going to be speaking to you today about the saving the flavors and the federal outlook overall. So Tony, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming today. We appreciate your time.
I appreciate you, Nick, and appreciate Nick Orlando and Dolores Orlando, everything they do with the Florida Smoke-Free Association. That is the first thing I want to talk about, because every company that does business in this industry has to participate in their trade associations, whether it's the National Association like the Vapor Technology Association, or if it's in your state, and if you're in Florida, you have to talk to these guys. They are doing hard work every day on the ground in this state, in the cities, as well as in the state capitol. So please reach out to them. Please talk to them about what's on their agenda. I've been asked today, if you don't know me, hey Bonnie, my name's Tony Abboud. I am a state lobbyist. I am also a lawyer by trade and practice, and I have spent the last 20 years, 24, 5 years now, defending companies in heavily regulated industries, both in the courtroom and in the state capitol. I am the executive director of the Vapor Technology Association. And if you don't know what that is, this is who we are. We are the national trade association that is working every day to defend and protect this industry and keep it open for as long as possible. Our members include every type of company that you see on that list. And the great thing about this slide is when we launched in January of 2016, I use this exact same slide, and the difference is that the people get better and better and better that are joining our association. So we just keep filling it out. Just to give you a perspective as to our growth, last year, this is what our board of directors looked like. We had major brands, vapor companies, flavor companies, retail sales, retail shops. This year, almost too many companies to fit on one slide. And the significance, as you can tell, is we have large players in the space that have said, we understand what Vapor Technology Association is doing, and we want to be a part of it because it's too important. But this is just the tip of the iceberg. We also have other big name companies that are not on our board that are contributing to the fight, and we have more fun announcements that are coming here in the next couple weeks. But the heart and soul of VTA really starts here in Florida and with all of the other trade associations that we have. We have been able to develop a network of over 25 state vapor trade associations, and we are working together now in a coordinated strategy to help protect vapor, not just at the federal level in DC, which I'm going to talk about in a second, but also at the state level. And this is incredibly significant, because groups working together is how you learn, how you grow, and how you execute a coordinated strategy. Nobody in this industry wants one set of laws in one state and another set of laws in another state. You can't do business as a manufacturer trying to sell products in 50 states if you have 50 different sets of laws. So one of our primary objectives is to make sure that those laws are consistent and they're smart. What I wanted to do is give you a little quick retrospective on where we were a little over a year ago. We had the PMTA deadline staring us in the face. You had a bunch of people talking about the fact that, hey, I got this PMTA thing, no problem, I'm going to be in business. Well, guess what? They were living a dream back then, because we knew what was going to happen. And so we implemented a strategy to get this done. What this is, sorry, I don't know, are the slides looking good up there? Can you see the slides? Okay. So it was July of last year, so almost now 12, 16 months ago, that the commissioner of the FDA came out with his big announcement about how he's going to modify his approach to the vapor industry and also regulate nicotine. One of the things that he did is he kicked out that PMTA deadline from 2016 to 2020, from 2018 to 2022. What that did was make sure that all companies could stay in business. Otherwise, we would right now be in shutdown mode. companies that were selling that didn't have PMTA clearance would be selling illegally, and they would be shutting down. Vape shops would have been shutting down long before this because they would not be re-signing leases or anything like that. So this change extended the runway for our industry, but it did not just happen. And that's what people have to realize. We executed a very discreet and sophisticated strategy in Washington, D.C. to get it done. And the first thing that we did was we went to the top, we met with HHS leadership. The next thing we did is we met with the White House. The next thing we did is we presented them with the legal and reasons that they could extend that deadline because they weren't sure they could do it in the first instance. Then we took everybody to Capitol Hill to make that case. And it was shortly thereafter that Gottlieb made his announcement and the deadline was extended. So we used that opportunity not to say, great, we won, because we didn't win, we got an extension. So we went straight then to meet with FDA. And we said, now is the time to talk about what regulation should look like. So we were the first group to get in January of this year to meet with Commissioner Gottlieb himself and Director Zeller, who is in charge of the Center for Tobacco Products. Now, what we told him at that meeting was that we needed serious changes to the PMTA process that would allow companies to continue to thrive. We also told him that he needs to consider pushing for industry standards. Companies want to comply, but we need to know the standards by which we can make our product, for which then the FDA would approve them. We also took the opportunity to talk to him about the importance of focusing not on flavors, but on marketing practices, because we know the importance of flavors, and I'll talk about that more in a little bit, but we wanted to make sure he understood that there was a big distinction between flavors and marketing, and that marketing is what we needed to get control of in this industry. And so we gave him our marketing standards that we had created for the industry in 2017, and we handed him those standards and we said, this is where you need to focus, not on flavors. This is just a quick graphic of those standards that are available on our website if anybody wants to check them out. They are important. Each company should make it a point of looking at these standards, making their own internal decisions as to whether you are going to live by them, because if you do, it will be beneficial to our industry. Well, it was a few months after we sat down with FDA that they actually sent out their first set of marketing letters where they tagged a number of companies and said, you are marketing your products improperly. You remember that? It made big news. And they hit 8 different products, but they sent letters to 17 companies, manufacturers and wholesalers. Well, right then we knew we had a target on our back. I think the industry has known for a long time that we have a target on our back when it comes to marketing. And I'm not sure if you walk around this place today, you'll still see some serious marketing problems. But that's us. That's on us. As an industry, if you see a problem like that, that's somebody who's put that target on our back. And guess what? FDA is digging in. So one of the interesting things that we noted, though, is when they sent their marketing letters, what they said to these companies, at least in this example and the other examples, was very similar to the exact standard that we had put together. And on the left side of this slide is the language that we drafted and pushed out to the industry. And on the right side of the slide is the actual language from the FDA's warning letter. And so when you look at it side by side, we thought it was interesting that we had kind of figured out what they would be looking for. We had said, and that's not just, I'm not saying that FDA read our standards and just, used them, which I hope they did, but the point is that we have a good sense when it comes to the leadership on our board as to how to deal with these issues. And we came up with this in January, and this is what the FDA put out in May. And they were almost lockstep, but for a couple different words. Now, everybody knows that flavors are the issue of the day, right? And what we have right now is a media frenzy. We have Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids pushing every button that they can, perpetrating every mistruth or lie that they can. And you've got these horrible websites called Flavors Hook Kids that are being put out by public health departments that are supposed to be protecting the public health interest. And the result is that you have a series of flavor ban ordinances at the city level in large cities, but also we saw some at the state level as well. This is a central tenet of our campaign. The next piece that came out was that earlier this year was the FDA issued what they called their advance notice of proposed rulemaking on flavors. And this is important. This is the first time they said, hey, we're going to ask a bunch of questions and we're going to ask industry and every other stakeholder tell us what are the issues, what are the concerns of whether flavors do impact cessation, do they impact initiation, what is the science behind it? Well, our board decided that this was too important an opportunity to pass up. So it wasn't in our budget, but we raised the funds to do it. We hired a professional scientific consulting group that went through hundreds of studies, every peer-reviewed study on flavors and vapor products, and we put together a full scientific analysis that we then presented to FDA as part of our response. And I'll talk to you in a little bit about what the highlights of that were. But it was the first time the industry, or anyone in the industry, had done a full scientific review of flavors. And frankly, the news was pretty good. Now, instead of just saying, here's what the science is, what we wanted to do was make sure that FDA was thinking about this. You have to focus, and you have to focus on what's important. And our argument is that if you're looking at regulating flavors, you have to remember what end of the risk continuum are we talking about. We know that cigarettes kill. Everybody knows that. That's well established, and nobody will contradict that fact. We also know that nicotine products do not kill, right? And so then the question is, where do we fall on that spectrum? And the most important thing we want people to understand is that we can no longer talk about tobacco versus flavors. FDA always says, should they be flavored or just tobacco? Well, tobacco is a flavor, right? We're not like any other tobacco product. If you have a cigar and you add flavor to it, you're changing the tobacco flavor to whatever flavor you choose. So, a Swisher Sweet can be grape, it can be strawberry, but if that flavor wasn't added, it would taste like tobacco, right? Every vapor product is flavored. It is either tobacco flavored, it is menthol flavored, or it is any other flavor that we choose to put in it. And so this concept of flavors are bad, but tobacco flavor is somehow better has to be eliminated. And that is something that I don't think FDA is considering, and that's one of the reasons we focused on that in our submission. Now, this was another point that we raised with them. And I don't know if you've seen what the American Cancer Society has said, but they came out with a revised statement. I don't know why these slides keep skipping on me. They came out with a revised statement, and they made our risk continuum argument for us. They said at one end of the spectrum of tobacco products are deadly cigarettes, which have 7,000 chemicals when you burn them, and 70 carcinogens. And then at the other end of the spectrum are the NRTs, the patch, the gum, the lozenge, everything we know doesn't work, but they're there, right? So they're not only not dangerous, they're not effective, but that's where they live. And in this statement, what was significant is they said closer to the NRT side of the continuum are current generation ENDS products, vapor products, which are likely to be much less harmful than combustible tobacco products. This is the first public health organization in the US to have come out with a balanced, thoughtful analysis of this situation. They are the first group to have stepped forward, and the reports are that it took a huge internal fight. So it is important for us as an industry to not simply point to science from the Royal College of Physicians or from Public Health England or from other parts of the world, but to say, look, our public health groups now are starting to get it. So what did the science tell us with respect to the role of flavors and cessation? What it told us was that adults do rely on a wide variety of flavors, right? How many people in this audience use multiple flavors? Okay, so the science also tells us that flavors do help smokers quit. Both longitudinal, that means long-term studies have proven that, and survey data proves that as well. But the last point is the most important point, and that is only with ENDS products, only with vapor products, can we make this argument. A flavored cigar can't make the argument that the flavors are helping people quit. Any other flavored tobacco product can't do it on the combustible side. So we are a unique product, and FDA has to think of us as a unique product. The other point that we wanted to make is this issue of dual use. And I don't know if many people know this, so I want to make sure you do. We hear a lot of criticism that says, hey, even if flavors are good and even if e-cigarettes are good in helping people, there are too many dual users. And that's dangerous because that's just continuing their use of cigarettes, right? That whole dual use argument, in my view, is meaningless. And it's meaningless because the FDA has already effectively endorsed dual use, even though they use it against us. We did some research, and I found that in 2013, this is what all the NRT warning labels said. They said, stop smoking completely before you start using the patch or the gum or the lozenge, right? And they warned you, do not use the product if you continue to smoke or use any other tobacco product, right? Well, guess what happened? In 2013, they changed the labels for all NRTs. Not only did they remove the stop using cigarettes first warning, that's gone. Not only did they remove this quit first warning, they encouraged the user, said even if you start smoking again, go ahead, keep using the NRT, keep using the patch, keep using the gum. And they said, by the way, if you want to keep using it beyond the recommended period, go ahead, do that too. To me, this is not just a change of position. They're telling smokers, if you're trying to quit and you're using a nicotine product, then we don't really care anymore. If you're getting your nicotine and you're smoking less, keep using that other source of nicotine. But when it comes to our product, they keep making that argument, and we can't let them make that argument anymore, which is why we put that front and center in our submission with FDA. Now, the youth issue is obviously incredibly important because it is captivating the press every single day. And that's why we developed our marketing standards. That's why we presented them to FDA. That's why we've been speaking on this issue at every opportunity that we get at every one of these types of shows or conferences. That's why we've been hosting our own conferences to talk about these issues. This is just too important, and we as an industry association have taken it very seriously, which is why I spent time on it. Now, what's interesting is that what we found in the research is that flavors are not scientifically proven to initiate cigarette smoking or to initiate teen use. And this is critical because this is what the whole debate is about. What we do know is that the data says that one of the reasons that teens might start using the product is flavors. But if you look at the actual survey, they show a whole bunch of other reasons. And usually, flavors is not the number one reason. In most of the studies, it's not even the top 3. So the notion that you just get rid of flavors and you're going to solve teen use, that doesn't make any sense. We know, I've got 3 teens. I can tell you that they will try all kinds of stuff. And we all have been teens, so we all know that. So nobody can seriously tell you it's one issue or one flavor that's going to drive it. Most of the problems with these studies too is they make these jumps. They want to reach an outcome, so they just jump to it. They say, well, this is what we've seen is an uptick, so therefore flavors must cause the initiation of vaping. Now, we do have to worry because what's happening in the next few days is going to be dramatic. And I'll talk about that in a second. But new numbers are coming out from the National Youth Tobacco Survey. The FDA commissioner has been talking about these numbers, and they're supposed to show a spike in e-cigarette use amongst teens. And because of that, he's talking about acting very aggressively. So the ultimate question is, do e-cigarettes cause smoking, right? And is there a gateway? The gateway argument is one that has already been scientifically disproven. And this is a slide that was put up by a professor from Harvard University who was part of the group that drafted the big study by the National Academy of Science, Engineering, and Medicine here in the US. It was the first big US study on this subject. And what she said is, look at this evidence. E-cigarette use goes up, cigarette use goes down. That's what she calls ecological evidence. She said, it's kind of hard to argue there's a gateway there. If you just look at the numbers, you can't have increasing e-cigarette use and decreasing smoking and say that one is leading to the other. Unless, of course, it's leading to a decrease in smoking. So we need to look very carefully at the claims that are made against us. We need to tease them out, and then we need to broadcast the truth, because obviously the truth gets misrepresented time and time again within our industry. But the more important thing is we cannot forget about the adult smoker. I don't know why any of you guys are in business, but a lot of companies that I know are in this business because they want to help people. They want to end the scourge of smoking, mostly because it's either killed a family member or because vapor has saved their own life, and they've turned around and said, I have to share this with everybody I know, right? And that is such a common experience, and it's such a compelling experience. So what we did is to make sure that those stories got to the commissioner of the FDA is we created this I'm Not an Anecdote campaign. And we had people basically fill in the blanks, check some boxes, and write their story down and send it in as sworn testimony, sworn under the penalty of perjury, that this is what happened in my life. And I want to share with you some of the results, because we had 9,308 people respond, and the overwhelming majority of them were heavy smokers. These guys smoked more, sorry the slides keep moving so fast, that they smoked more than one pack a day. The last slide showed that they were 10-year smokers. So we're talking about the people who were answering these questions were hardcore smokers. And this is what happened. 8,371 of them said that vaping e-liquids with flavors helped them quit smoking cigarettes. Only 9% of them said, I didn't quit, but I reduced my smoking. And this is critical. The flavors used most often to quit is this answer here. And if you look at it and you add up the fruit, the desserts, and the other sweets, you get to over 86%. Let me go back to that for you. The threat that we are under today is that there is a move afoot to simply push tobacco and menthol flavors only. My fear is what happens to all the people that relied upon fruit, desserts, and other sweets. What do? Do they go and they say, well, I'll tolerate tobacco flavor, I'll use it, or I'll use menthol, and that'll suit my needs? Or do they just go back to smoking? Or do they go into and start finding it on the black market? Or do they start mixing themselves, right? You got all kinds of other scenarios, none of which are necessarily very good. But FDA needed to hear and see these, and these are slides that I actually just presented at the Food, Drug, and Law Institute just a couple weeks ago, where all the FDA people were in attendance. We met with FDA again, and we told them basically, you're going to fail in your mission this year because you're not letting safer products into the market. We have new products, we have safety innovations, we can solve the problem of discharging batteries, but all those technologies are being sold overseas because you will not let us make any changes to these products. They were floored. They had no idea that a simple change in circuit, a switch, could be used and is being used in other countries, and they couldn't figure out a way to let that change be made in the United States. So they were stuck in their old regulatory scheme, and then they see the headlines. And we effectively told them, and you didn't really have to read between the lines too much, we told them the next one that blows is on you. because we can tell you this is fixable, we know it's fixable, but you don't give us a pathway to let us fix it. So one of the things that I mentioned earlier was the importance of flavors. And the scientific answer that we gave, it was just the first step. One of the things that we did, and you'll hear more about it in the next presentation, is we decided that we were going to take on the fight to save flavors in every state this year, which means that we're assembling a team that is going to protect every state from any sort of flavor ban bill that comes up. We've already engaged in the city of Chicago and stopped that flavor ban ordinance there. We're engaged in Sacramento right now, and we're in negotiations on that one there as well. And because of who we are, we're really uniquely situated to fight this fight, and that's why we need people to participate in what we're doing. Just a couple highlights on some other big issues. I don't know how much you guys are aware of tariffs, but the Trump administration has imposed tariffs on all of our products, on all the devices coming in from China. We testified in opposition to those because we didn't want a 25% tax increase being placed on our products. And we also submitted written testimony in opposition to it. We knew that the tariffs were going to be approved. The president had a bigger agenda, he had a bigger strategy, and our product was just lumped in with a whole bunch of other products, including particle accelerators, things that are actually truly high technology that you are concerned about getting in the hands of foreign companies. So that fit their narrative. This one didn't fit, but we couldn't just extract ourselves. So what happened is, and if you don't know this, you need to know this, for all finished kits coming in from overseas, from China specifically, a 25% tariff is now imposed, in addition to, I think it's a 2 or 2.5% tariff. So, and then a second set of tariffs have gone into effect on all the components for those devices. And it's 10% now, and it will be 25% in January. So we've come up with a new strategy, which is to seek a specific line item exclusion from the tariff, just for vapor products. There's a process that we are going to. We've hired a law firm that's worked with us on this. But what we also asked them to do is do something for our members. So if you are a company that is interested in opposing the tariffs, we need more than one association to file. We're going to file on behalf of the entire industry because that's what we do. But the more votes, so to speak, the more requests that go in, the better. So what we've negotiated is a flat rate price for any company that is interested in submitting an exclusion request of only $3,500. So that's all the lawyer time. They'll put the whole tariff exclusion request together for you. And it's something that we're going to try to get as many different companies to participate in. So we have many companies telling the administration, this one must change. Now, recently we were invited to speak at a big FDA stakeholder meeting. We pushed for major changes in the policies and the regulations that FDA has. It was a great opportunity, but it was most importantly a recognition that the FDA was wanting to hear what members of the Vapor Technology Association had to say on these issues. So we're very happy to participate. What was interesting of that two-day meeting was it was so obvious that there are so many more questions than FDA has answers for us right now. We also presented, I mentioned earlier, at this other meeting at the Food, Drug, and Law Institute to a whole room of professionals on the issue of flavors and the importance of thinking about flavors in a new paradigm. And we just received word that we've been invited to go back to speak with FDA Center for Tobacco Products, which we are setting up in the next few weeks. So we're just going to keep pounding the message until it gets through. Now, the concern we have is what happens next with these elections. Obviously, our public affairs group put together some slides for us just to give you an idea. And in case anybody was sleeping for the last few days, the Democrats have now taken over the House of Representatives. It's not something that we did not anticipate. We fully anticipated that would happen. The only question was how big was going to be the margin of victory. But this is significant because this changes the dynamic in Congress. Up until now, there have not been hearings of any material consequence on this issue. There was one hearing a number of years ago. We can expect that there will be a hearing. There are people in Congress that do not like our industry. There are people in Congress that believe that we are just preying upon children. And they will make sure at the right time, they have a lot of issues to deal with too, other issues, but they will at the right time make sure that there is some hearing. So we have to be prepared for that now that Democrats control. However, Republicans have control of the Senate. In fact, they grew their control. These slides might be a little outdated because I got them about 24 hours ago. But you can see that there was not a huge wave, but now we do have a divided government, which means that in the lobbying world, the Senate, at least on our issue, will have to be our stopper. If a bill would pass out of the House with just Democratic votes, we would have to stop it in the Senate. And just this is a quick map just to show you where the U.S. gubernatorial post came out, which is very interesting because there were some Democratic gains, but there were also some Republican gains as well. And Jake will talk a little bit more about this in the future. But really, what we have prepared for long ago was this particular outcome. And so we are actually expanding our federal lobbying team in Washington, D.C. to specifically deal with the new Democratic majority in the House. And that's an exciting announcement that we haven't really made publicly up until right now. So we are growing as an organization, and we are taking on all the key fights. This is the federal outlook I have right now. Right now, FDA has been promising action. I just heard on the way here that we could have a big announcement tomorrow. But then again, every day I've heard another rumor, okay? And the rumors are going crazy. But if you don't know, what is happening in the next week basically within the next week, is that the big four tobacco companies and Juul were sent a letter by the FDA almost 60 days ago. And the FDA said, I want you to tell me what you are going to do to keep this product out of the hands of kids. What are you as a manufacturer going to do to prevent a retailer from selling the product? And the FDA came up with a bunch of ideas as to suggestions, including take your product off of the market, okay? Which, when I first read it, I thought, that's just crazy, right? Well, what's interesting is that what's been put on the table right now is T21 has been put on the table by Altria and by Reynolds. They both have looked at the tea leaves and said, we acknowledge that the age to smoke and vape should probably go to 21. Altria, if you didn't hear this announcement, pulled all of its vapor products off of the market, except for its Cigalikes, which it said they will only sell in tobacco and menthol. So Altria basically said, we're going to take the product out of the market that isn't selling because nobody's buying those products. And obviously that will make FDA feel good. But the worst part about it is it gives FDA something to point to. The reason FDA sent these 5 companies the letter is because FDA claims they are 97% of the market. Now, that might be true by dollar value or sales, but we know that those products that these 5 companies sell don't even come close to representing 97% of the vapor products in the market. But that's, I think, by design. I think that whatever the commissioner comes out with and proposes, he's going to be able to say, I'm imposing this solution, or I've reached these concessions with 97% of the market, so it must be right. And that's going to create more pressure on other policymakers or other companies to follow suit. And all this is happening now. Altria already came out with its letter 2 weeks ago and said what they were going to do. And other companies have not submitted their letters yet, but it's all happening literally as we speak. So we're waiting on their other responses, and that's going to show us what, in fact, where this train is going to go next. So here are some real possible near-term actions. I'll finish with this, and I'll answer any questions you have. Gottlieb could make an announcement saying he's going to initiate a rulemaking to limit or ban flavors, right? He's already done the ANPRM, the advance notice. That's the one that we responded to already. He could say, okay, now I've looked at all the science, I've looked at all the submissions that everybody gave me. It's now time to propose an actual regulation. That is a process that will take years to accomplish because he has to go through a regulatory process to get that done. And we will be there every step of the way to push back at the administration level and within FDA. The other thing he could do, and I think this is probably a high likelihood, he could say, you know, I moved the PMTA date back to 2022. That was a mistake. We now have this epidemic with teen use, so I got to do something different to make sure these products are okay. This is something he has complete discretion to do, and he can do tomorrow if he so chose. And what that means is that all the companies that have been waiting on guidance and the foundational rules for how to file a PMTA application are still waiting, but now our timetable would be even shorter. So this is a precarious time because what he could do is artificially take that 2022 date and move it forward. Now, depending upon how far he moves it, if he moves it, we will respond appropriately, but that is something that he has completely within his discretion. He might try to do something more dramatic. Those things that he's been talking about a lot on television are dramatic. He suggested taking products out of convenience stores and selling them only in vape shops, for example. He's been suggesting cutting off online sales. And he's been suggesting that he's going to do this by his own pen. Well, these are things that he cannot do. And if he did, just without a regulatory process, which of course will take years to accomplish, if he tried to snap his fingers and make it happen, he would have himself in court because a large number of groups would take issue with that. So I think a lot of people have been getting nervous about what they've been hearing in the press. Some of the things you should be nervous about, some of the things like an immediate online ban or an immediate flavor ban, I don't think you need to be as worried about because there's a process that he legally has to go through to get that done. So at the end of the day, our job is to defend the industry. We work day and night to make this happen. We're rolling out program after program, team after team to execute, and we can't do it without all the companies getting behind a coordinated strategy. And that's what we've built over the last 3 years, is a truly professional and coordinated strategy. And the fight is just getting tougher and tougher because of the media narrative, and we're working on that as well. So we really do need to all work on this together, and that's why we encourage anybody and everybody to join. We are open to all companies in this space. We are open to anybody that wants to participate at any level, and we think we're doing the best work that we can do. We know we are doing a professional job, and we are so excited about the future, in large part because we have built something real. So with that, I will open it up to questions. I hope this information was helpful. I hope some of it was new. I hope some of it scared you. I hope some of it made you a little calmer. But if you got questions, I got answers. I don't know, you have a microphone? I don't know.
I got it. Does anybody have a question? Anybody? Here we go.
Hey, thank you so much.
Yeah.
I missed the beginning of the talk, so maybe this was covered, but the smaller deadlines, you know, not these dramatic things that you're talking about towards the end here, but like today was a deadline for submitting recipes for registered flavors. Is that correct?
Ingredient listings.
What was that?
Ingredient listings.
Right. Okay.
Unless, of course, you were in the states of Florida, South Carolina, Georgia, California, because they waited till the day before to say if you were in a hurricane or a tornado or a disaster area, you could have an extension. But of course, most people had their work already done.
Right. So, I mean, how long do you think things like that will take to, like, when will things that didn't exist before August 8th, 2016, didn't register by August 2017, and aren't submitting recipe or flavor ingredients. When will those things when will the hammer come down? When will those things be taken off the
so
market?
that's a great question, because it goes to the core issue of what's FDA doing, right? They're regulating. They ask us to give them a bunch of information, and then what do they do with it, right? The enforcement ability of FDA is nowhere close to what it needs to be. So the number of visits that they made, and that the commissioner made a big deal about in his press release about a month and a half ago, to convenience stores and to gas stations and then some vape shops, was a very focused effort to go and enforce on that one issue, right? But if you go back, there is another requirement coming down the pike called the HPHC requirement, the harmful and potentially harmful constituent filing. It's next November. The last filing that was done for tobacco products was years ago, and that information has never been made public. And that's the whole point of the filing, is that information becomes available so that people can have access to it and understand what is in these products. They're not going to require our industry to do that, and yet they don't have a plan for what they're going to do with it. And we know that because they haven't done anything with the last set of data that was dumped on them. The second piece is that they also don't have any obvious plans for what enforcement they're going to do with respect to ingredient listing. Now that they have the information, they can go and use it, but nothing's been rolled out. So it is a frustrating thing because it seems like it's regulation for regulation's sake. But at the end of the day, the core issue is what's going to happen with the pre-market tobacco application process. And even that, they haven't come up with their foundational rules that they promised in July of 2017. So all of this feeds into what products are they going to allow to remain on the market? And then what are they going to do? So they've now only started to enforce against some what they believe are post-8.8 products. And I'm sure they're going to find some post-8.8 products, but I'm also sure they're going to tag some products that they think are post-8.8 because they don't really have a good way of finding out. So it's somewhat of a house of cards, but that's their mystery to figure out. Unfortunately, we have to live with that nightmare.
Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions?
Anyone else?
One quick comment. I think it's
Yeah.
critical that what you're doing with separating the marketing from the flavors. That's
Can you talk a little louder?
I think it's a good strategy to separate the flavors from the marketing because that's critical, obviously.
Okay. Yeah.
But in response to the request to the companies to provide suggestions as to what they would do to prevent usage by underage consumers, and what do you think are some reasonable responses to that?
Yeah, so you got to break it down, right? You have different paths of access to products. Online is one. So FDA could have, when they passed the deeming regulation, they could have done what we did in state bills around the country, where with respect to online sales, we said you have to have third-party age verification systems that are checked against multiple government databases. They never did that. That's such low-hanging fruit, right? So we would encourage FDA, before you consider banning online sales, because consumers in every region of this country need to have a way to get access to their product, do smart things like that. It's not really that smart, it's pretty basic. All right, so that's one thing. Now, as far as other mechanisms, well, we do know, I think, personally, that penalties are important, right? You can increase penalties on retailers. I know that there are really good retailers that care about this issue so much because they know how much it affects the industry that they wouldn't give a darn. In fact, I know one group that's going to run their own state bill to say, jack up the penalty on us for the first violation. We're good with that because we know what we're doing, right? and the guys that don't know what they're doing should be penalized, right? So the reality is today, the FDA can tag a retailer 7 times before they will shut them down. And then after 12 months, it restarts. So you get basically 6 bites at the apple every 12 months. Now, there's no real logic there, right? If this is as serious of an issue as they are portraying it to be, if this is an epidemic, right, it is very easy to say, look, we're going to alter the scheme, we're going to increase the penalties, we're going to reduce the number of free passes that you get, and we're also going to make sure that we are enforcing. Like, we are going to direct our funding to make sure that we are hitting the vape shops, that we are hitting the convenience stores and the gas stations, right? We're not just going to do it on this small scale, hey, we're going to do a hit program so we can do a press release.
Right. From the convenience store standpoint, they should be doing that already for the cigarettes and cigars. So it's
right. They already have the issue, and
right.
the companies that sell in those stores also have a responsibility. And one of the suggestions that we've given them is they have what they call these buy down programs, right? And so what they can do is they can penalize the retailer for these types of violations. Because the retailers, there's all kinds of incentives that are built into the programs that they have, right? So you can use that leverage, and guess what? They learn pretty quick, right? So even if you're dealing with an 18-year-old kid behind a convenience store, counter, they'll learn pretty quick. And if you're going to replace them, you're going to replace them, right? It's the retailer that's behind the counter that cares, gets it, right? And they're going to comply, and that's not going to be an issue.
And one last thing, what about social media in that regard, the marketing?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I think social media is something that, we have serious First Amendment issues, right, in terms of regulating. I think that companies who utilize social media need to make sure that they are age verifying, that the demographics, the channels that they're choosing, the messages that they're using are consistent, frankly, with the marketing standards that we've implemented. That they don't use spokespeople that look like they're young, that they do take these basic steps. You don't go and promote at events, for example, that are not at least 85% adult. All of these are choices that our companies are making. Some of them are making really good choices. Some of them are just not even thinking about it. And then some of them are making bad choices. And it's those latter 2 categories that we got to really, really work on, because this is the tail that is wagging the whole dog. I will tell you a personal story where I said I had 3 teens earlier, right? And this issue came up, and she was telling me about one of her friends, and I said, and this was 12 months ago, I said, this issue that I'm working on every single day, right? I want you to know that your friend doing this is screwing millions of adults in this country. Not to mention business owners, but people are dying today because of cigarette smoking. And this is the first real chance. And this is the message I keep leaving with anybody that will listen. We have a lot of tools in our tool shed to keep these products out of the hands of kids. Plain and simple. We do not have tools in our tool shed to keep adults from smoking cigarettes if it were not for vapor products. And if our government goes down the path of regulating to such an extent that we shut down that pathway to getting people off and force people to use products that we know are ineffective, they just don't work, this is a very dangerous predicament that we're in. We can walk and chew gum at the same time. It's pretty simple. And this is a country that's built on innovation. We should be allowing innovation to drive us forward in this space, not holding it back, not being fearful. And that is a strong message. We just need to keep banging the door with it. Any other questions?
Anybody else? Okay, well, if that's all we have for today, I want to thank Tony for coming out.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And I'm Dolores with FSFA. Over here is our booth. If you're not a member, we would love to speak to you and have that opportunity to let you know what we're doing on a state level. And also, your FSFA membership does entitle you to an affiliate membership with the VTA. So if anyone's interested, please come see me. Also, our next speaker will be Jake Butcher at 2:30. He will be talking about the state of the state information and giving you an update on what happened with Amendment 9 with our voting process that happened earlier in the week. Thanks, guys. Thanks for coming.
And I'll just put in a pitch. You want to hear that because there's so much stuff that's happening at the state level. It's going to be a dogfight this year, but that's what we're getting ready for.
Thanks, guys.